The first thing Arya Bell heard was the sound of something large and bony collapsing to the floor. The second thing she heard was her own voice saying a confused sorry to what turned out to be a 7-foot skeleton guard who had fainted at the sight of her. The entire throne hall of the Reaper Court froze. Some dropped quills, some dropped sides, and one ghost dropped its own jaw, which was impressive because it was not attached to anything in the first place. Arya had never made an entrance anywhere in her life, but apparently entering a realm of death in blue jeans and a hoodie counted as a catastrophic event. The hall rang with whispers. A human. A real one. Flesh. Soft. Fragile. Contagiously alive. A ridiculous spark of survival instinct burst in her chest as every hollow eye socket in the room turned toward her. She thought she might faint, but unfortunately fainting required the ability to relax, and her soul was currently locked in a state of pure panic and confusion. It had started that morning when she clicked yes on a strange online forum that promised one question to discover your cosmic match. She was bored, mildly caffeinated, and curious. When it asked if she accepted the bond, she clicked yes again. The next second she was not in her apartment but standing in this vast obsidian hall where everything looked like it was carved out of shadows and nightmares. She had not even had breakfast yet. A Reaper noble wearing a crown of polished vertebrae stepped forward and wrinkled what might have been a nose if it had skin. "What is that?" Arya raised her hand with a weak wave. "Hi. I think this is a misunderstanding," another noble hissed. "A human? The bride is a human? This is an insult to the court." Arya blinked, trying very hard to deliver a smile even though she was 90% sure she might be dreaming, dead, hallucinating, or all three. A tall ghost with the posture of someone who had never been wrong in its entire afterlife floated closer until it almost touched her. Arya leaned away. Personal space still exists even if you do not. The bone court erupted in hissing laughter. Humans do not survive here. Humans cry if the temperature drops by 2 degrees. Humans panic when they lose phone signal. Arya crossed her arms. That last one is true but hurtful. A Reaper with a cracked skull sneered. This girl is nothing. Our king cannot have bonded to this. The moment the word bonded hit her ears, Arya froze. Bond. Contract. Marriage. She remembered the flashing screen on her laptop that said your match has accepted. Arya whispered to herself. Oh no. No, no, no. I did not marry anyone. My mom is going to kill me before the Reapers even get the chance. A group of armored guards surrounded her. One tapped its scythe against the ground and announced that by decree of the court, the contract would be annulled immediately due to the obvious biological incompatibility of the bride. Another guard added that she would be gently erased. Arya stiffened. Erased. You mean like memory erased or existence erased? No one answered, which was deeply concerning. While the court prepared, Arya tried to stay calm. She reminded herself she was good at problem solving under stress. At least, she had been good that one time she lost her Wi-Fi password. She raised her hand politely. Before anyone erases me, can someone explain where your king is, because I would prefer to discuss this with the man I apparently married. The nobles scoffed. The king has been missing for 3 days. He is unstable. He is dangerous. He will certainly not appear for you. Arya swallowed as something cold and sharp tugged at the edge of her soul, like an unseen force was pulling at a thread only she could feel. A few Reapers sensed it too and exchanged worried glances. The lead noble waved dismissively. Enough. Annul the contract. Execute the erasure. Step aside and... The temperature dropped so suddenly the hall frosted at the edges. A pressure rolled through the court that made every Reaper fall silent. Time did not stop, but it felt like it held its breath. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, a dark shape emerged slowly, each step echoing like the strike of a hammer. Arya felt the tug on her soul grow stronger, pulling her toward the figure. The nobles bowed instantly. Some trembled. Some knelt. Even the skeletal guard who fainted earlier scrambled to get back on the ground in a respectful position. A voice swept through the hall, deep enough to shake dust from the rafters. Who insulted my wife? Arya almost jumped. Wife. He said wife. He said it like it was fact and law and promise all in one. The figure stepped fully into the dim light. He wore black armor that looked alive, as if shadows breathed along its surface. His face was pale but sharply defined, his eyes glowing softly like fading embers. His presence did not feel like death, it felt like the silence after a storm, dangerous but strangely protective. The lead noble immediately fell to both knees. And my king? We did not know you had accepted a human bride. Selim, the Reaper King, turned his head slightly, his gaze sweeping the hall. Every shadow bent toward him like it wanted to cling to his form. He spoke again, calm but with enough power that the walls trembled. You insulted her. In my hall. In my absence. Arya raised a hesitant hand. Hi. I did not mean to cause trouble. I am just trying to figure out what is going on. Selim looked at her then, fully, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. His expression softened so subtly she wondered if she imagined it. He stepped toward her, and the sea of nobles parted instantly. He stopped right in front of her, and inclined his head. You are Arya Bell. My bonded. Arya squeaked. Bonded. Is that the word we are using? Selim nodded once. It is the only word. The hall watched in terrified silence as the king offered his hand to her. Arya hesitated only because she had no idea what etiquette applied when the king of death extended a hand to his accidental human bride. She placed her fingers into his palm and felt the coldness of his touch mixed with a strange sense of safety. Selim turned his gaze to the court. No one touches her again. No one questions her right to stand here. The next voice that mocks her will lose it. Forever. The nobles bowed deeper, trembling. Arya stared up at the intimidating figure beside her, a mix of terror, awe, and a small spark of something she could not yet name swirling in her chest. She whispered to him. I think we need to talk because I did not exactly plan to marry a Reaper today. Selim replied quietly. Neither did I. Yet here we are. And with that, he led her out of the hall, leaving behind a court too afraid to breathe. Selim guided Arya through a long obsidian corridor lit by blue flame lanterns that hissed softly each time she walked past, as though offended by her human warmth. She clung to composure the way some people clung to life, which felt ironic considering where she currently was. Every doorway they passed contained something alarming. A Reaper polishing its scythe while humming ominously. A ghost going through what looked like wedding counseling with a demon therapist. A skeletal receptionist arguing with a banshee over paperwork. The absurdity was so intense that the panic in her chest slowly dissolved into a strange, confused amusement. Selim finally released her hand once they reached what seemed like his private chamber. It was enormous, dark, dramatic, and exactly what she would expect from a king of death. Shadows coiled on the walls as though they were alive. A giant throne of obsidian sat in one corner like it had been abandoned after a centuries-long meeting. Selim stopped in the center of the room and turned to her. I owe you an explanation. His voice was calm, deeper than she remembered, but gentler now. Arya crossed her arms, partly because she wanted to look braver than she felt, and partly because she had zero idea how to stand in front of the literal embodiment of death without her legs wobbling. Yes, please. Because my day started with a coffee order and somehow escalated to me being married to a supernatural king. Selim studied her like he was analyzing a rare artifact. You accepted a soul match contract. Not knowing what it was. Arya groaned. It was on a website. It said find your cosmic partner. I thought it was like a personality quiz. I did not expect it to teleport me here. Selim moved closer until she could feel the cold air around him. The contract uses ancient universal binding magic. It matches souls based on their unique resonance. It is not random. It is not accidental. Arya blinked at him. So my soul resonated with the King of Death. That sounds like a therapy topic waiting to happen. Selim actually paused, as if unsure how to respond. The bond forms only when both participants accept. You clicked yes. Arya threw her hands up. I click yes on everything. Terms and conditions, update reminders, Wi-Fi prompts. Selim murmured something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like "this explains much." He motioned for her to sit on a shadow-woven couch that shifted under her weight but strangely did not collapse. Once she settled, he continued, "There is more. A rumor is spreading among the court that my power is unstable. I have been missing for days. The nobles want to show I am unfit to rule. They reacted as they did because they believed you were a threat to their control." Arya frowned. "I am a human who cannot do magic. How is that a threat?" Selim lowered himself into a seat across from her, his posture both regal and exhausted. "The bond stabilizes the Reaper King. For thousands of years our tradition required a partner who balances the death force. The court expected a powerful Reaper or spirit. They did not expect someone alive." Arya stared at him. "So I am basically a walking emotional support human for death." Selim blinked in confusion. "If that is your way of describing it, then yes." She let out a small laugh because the absurdity was too much to handle otherwise. "So if I leave, you get unstable. If I stay, everyone tries to erase me." "Wonderful." Before Selim could answer, a loud knock echoed from the door. Without waiting for permission, a Reaper inspector marched inside. He was shorter than Selim, very strict-looking, and carried a clipboard made of some poor creature's skull. He glared at Arya. "I am here to evaluate the marriage." Arya sputtered. "Evaluate what?" Selim moved slightly, a silent threat, but the inspector did not flinch. "The court demands proof the union is emotionally compatible. If not, the contract will be annulled." Arya leaned to Selim and whispered loudly enough for the inspector to hear. "Is he serious?" Selim looked like he regretted every moment of existing. The inspector clicked his bone pen. "First question. Do you two share trust?" Arya blinked. "I met him 10 minutes ago." Selim nodded. "That is correct." The inspector made an annoyed scribble. "Second question. Demonstrate affection." Arya choked. Selim straightened, clearly ready to leave the building through sheer willpower. "Affection is not quantifiable." The inspector tapped the clipboard. "It is for this evaluation." Arya cleared her throat. "Okay, wait. I can do this." She gently patted Selim's shoulder. The inspector stared in silent disbelief. Arya shrugged. "I am human. That is basically a hug." The inspector huffed. "Unconventional but acceptable. Next question. Does the king make an effort to support the bride's emotional needs?" Selim froze like someone who realized he missed an exam. Arya jumped to rescue him. "He has been very polite, and he has not killed anyone in front of me." The inspector considered this. "Not ideal, but I suppose it counts." More scribbling followed. As he left, Arya lunged for the door to close it behind him but accidentally pulled too hard, causing a chunk of the shadow frame to crumble. She stepped back. "Sorry." Selim raised an eyebrow. "You broke a door made of living shadow because you pulled too hard." Arya flushed. Humans do weird things when stressed. Before Selim could reply, a shrill whistle cut through the air. A Reaper guard stormed inside, raising a silver dagger aimed directly at Arya. "Die, mortal." Selim moved so fast she did not even see him. One moment he was seated, the next the guard was pinned against the wall by shadows gripping its limbs. Selim's voice dropped to something cold and ancient. "You dare threaten her in my presence." The guard tried to speak, but the shadows tightened. Selim lifted his hand and the attacker dissolved into harmless ash. The room fell still. Selim turned back to Arya, and for the first time she saw genuine fear flicker across his expression, not for himself but for her. "They will not stop," he said quietly. "Someone wants this bond broken no matter the cost." Arya felt her pulse racing, but instead of backing away she stepped toward him. "Then we deal with it." Selim stared at her in a way that made her chest feel strangely warm for someone standing inches from death itself. "You do not fear me." Arya swallowed. "I am afraid of a lot of things. Elevators. Spiders. My landlord." But right now, yes, I am less afraid of you than I am of being erased. A breath of something like amusement passed across his features before he gestured for her to follow. Then stay close to me. Until the court accepts you, no one touches you. He opened the chamber doors. The hallway beyond filled with flickering shadows that bowed deeply the moment he stepped forward. Arya took a small step beside him, uncertain but determined, and the shadows bowed to her too. For the first time since she arrived, she felt a strange truth settle inside her. She might be human. She might be out of place. But she was not powerless. Not with the Reaper King at her side. The next morning in the Reaper realm began with noise that sounded like 100 tortured violins scraping against tin plates. Arya shot up from the shadow-woven couch she had been allowed to sleep on, her hair sticking out in 6 different directions, convinced someone was being murdered in the hallway. She rushed toward the door only to find Selim standing there perfectly calm, holding what looked like an official announcement scroll made of something suspiciously similar to dried skin. The violins were not screams, they were the herald trumpets announcing important political nonsense. Selim handed her the scroll. The council has made a decision regarding your status. Arya stared at the scroll. The last time she opened something he gave her, she ended up accidentally married. She hesitated. Does opening this bind me to something again? Selim looked almost apologetic. Unfortunately, yes. They are invoking the bride trials. Arya blinked. The what? Before Selim could explain, the door swung open so violently the hinges whimpered. A banshee noble glided in, her gown trailing fog, her eyes gleaming like polished ice. Behind her slithered a shadow siren with the self-satisfied smile of someone who practiced their smirk in reflective surfaces. The banshee bowed mockingly. Greetings, human bride. The trials begin at once. Arya took one look at their elegant deadlier-than-thou appearances and groaned. Please tell me this is a cooking competition because I can actually do that. The shadow siren laughed. Sadly no. These trials determine whether you are worthy to remain the king's bride or if he will choose a more suitable queen from among us. Arya glanced at Selim, who suddenly looked like a man desperately doing internal damage control. They cannot replace you. You already accepted the bond. Arya folded her arms. Great. So not only do they want me erased, now they want me to fail a magical Olympics. Selim reached for her hand but stopped halfway, unsure. I will be present as a witness, but tradition forbids me from interfering. Arya exhaled slowly. Fine. I will try. But if they ask me to juggle souls or fight a ghost bear, I am quitting this dimension. Minutes later the bone court was transformed into a circular arena. Spectators filled every tier, whispering, betting, and glaring. Arya stood in the center feeling like a mouse dropped into a pit of snakes. The banshee and shadow siren flanked her, both radiating confidence. A skeletal judge banged its gravel made from a cracked femur. Trial 1 begins soul strength. Contestants must enter the illusion chamber and survive whatever visions they encounter. Arya's stomach dropped. I do not have magic. The judge replied simply. Then do not die. The chamber doors opened. Arya hesitated only long enough to mutter, this realm really needs better safety guidelines, then stepped inside. Darkness swallowed her instantly. A thick mist curled around her ankles. For a moment nothing happened. Then the floor tilted violently, and she found herself standing in her childhood bedroom. Her mother called from downstairs, the familiar warm voice echoing faintly. Arya felt her chest tighten painfully. She moved toward the door out of instinct, but halfway there the walls melted, warping into something monstrous. Dark hands clawed from the floor. Voices whispered her worst fears. You do not belong. You will die here. Selim will choose another. You are weak. Useless. Pathetic. Arya froze, heart pounding. She knew this was not real, yet the fear felt brutally sharp. Shadows twisted, forming towering versions of herself failing, falling, disappearing. One illusion lunged at her. She stumbled backward and her hand hit the nightstand beside her bed. Her fingers closed around something familiar. A slipper. A fuzzy pink slipper with rabbit ears that she had worn when she was 10. Without thinking, she hurled it at the illusion. The slipper whacked the shadow creature squarely in the head. It let out a sound that somehow conveyed intense embarrassment, and dissolved instantly. Arya blinked. Did I just defeat a nightmare monster by insulting it with childhood footwear? The illusions wavered, unsure now. Arya planted her hands on her hips. Listen here, anxiety gremlins. I deal with bills, taxes, and unfiltered emails. I do not have time for you. Go haunt someone with less responsibilities. One by one the illusions crumbled. The chamber brightened. The judge's voice boomed. Human contestant has passed. Spectators gasped. The banshee scowled. The shadow siren hissed. Arya stumbled out of the chamber sweating. Selim watched her, quiet awe flickering across his features. Trial 2 begins. Reaper etiquette. The judge waved its bone staff and a table of royal items appeared. Polishing skulls, formal scythe tempering, shadow folding, and presentation posture. Arya studied the items. The banshee immediately began polishing a ceremonial skull with perfect grace. The shadow siren folded shadows into delicate spirals. Arya picked up a skull, misjudged its weight, and nearly dropped it. She caught it barely in time and laughed nervously. I am so sorry. This is probably some dead relative. Spectators winced. Arya sighed, sat on the floor, and started cleaning every skull she could reach with fierce determination. Not gracefully or correctly, but thoroughly. Lower-ranked reapers in the audience perked up. That is how my grandmother polished skulls. She respects tradition? She polished mine too. Slowly, cheers built from the lower tiers. The upper nobles looked horrified. The judge examined the results, unimpressed at first, then paused. The human has polished every skull on the table and several not on the table. Efficient. Unexpected. Acceptable. Arya looked at Selim, who hid half his face behind his hand, possibly to mask amusement. The banshee glared. That is not how etiquette works. The judge shrugged. Efficiency matters. Moving on. But before the next trial could begin, a sharp cry echoed from behind the arena. Arya turned and saw the banshee lunging toward her, nails elongated into claws, eyes glowing with killing intent. Arya stumbled backward. The crowd erupted. Selim took one step forward, but the judge raised its staff. Interference forbidden. Arya dodged and fell to the ground, rolling away just as the banshee slashed at her. The shadow siren watched with a smirk, clearly expecting Arya to fail. Something inside Arya snapped. Fear. Anger. Determination. All tangled into one bright spark. As the banshee lunged again, Arya thrust her hand upward, not to strike but to shield herself. A sudden burst of light surged from her palm, slamming into the banshee and hurling her backward. The arena fell silent. Arya stared at her hand in horror. Selim looked stunned. The judge whispered. The bond power awakened. Arya trembled as Selim rushed to her side. He did not touch her, but his presence steadied her. Someone in the crowd whispered a prophecy. A human bride with awakened bond magic is a threat to the court. Arya felt eyes turning hostile. Selim lowered his voice for her alone. This changes everything. She swallowed hard. I figured. The judge cleared its throat. The human survives the attack. She passes. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half furious. The banshee shrieked in rage and disappeared into a swirl of fog. The shadow siren narrowed her eyes, calculating. The trials were far from over. Arya felt the crushing weight of the realm pressing in around her. But she was still standing. Still breathing. Still fighting. And whatever force inside her had awakened, it was only beginning. The arena had emptied, but the tension clung to the air like smoke after a fire. Arya walked beside Selim through a dim underground passage lit only by drifting soul lanterns. Each flame flickered with whispers that made her shiver. She had passed the trials so far, survived a banshee assault, and unleashed a burst of magic she did not understand. But the silence between her and Selim was heavier than the stone walls around them. He finally spoke, his voice low. What you did in the arena was impossible for a human. Arya folded her arms. That seems to be a running theme for my week. Selim stopped walking. You awakened the bond in a way no recorded bride ever has. It should not be possible. The words hung between them like a warning. Arya wanted to make a joke, but her chest felt too tight. The nobles looked at me like I turned into a ticking time bomb. Selim stepped closer, lowering his head until his voice was barely above a whisper. The court fears what it cannot control. And they already fear you for existing. Arya forced a small laugh. Great. So I am an accidental queen candidate with illegal magic and a target pinned to my forehead. Wonderful. Selim looked at her as though he wanted to say something else, but instead he motioned toward a giant door covered in runes. There is something you must see. The door slid open, revealing a vast archive chamber. Rows upon rows of floating scrolls and shifting tablets filled the room. Ghostly librarians drifted silently between the aisles. Arya felt a heavy tug in her chest, like the room recognized her presence. Selim led her deeper until they reached a sealed pedestal. This is the Forbidden Archive. Records the council keeps hidden. They believe I do not know how to access them. Arya raised an eyebrow. But you are the king. Selim gave a humorless smile. Yes. And they have spent centuries trying to control me. He touched the pedestal and the seal broke. The tablet inside pulsed with dim red light. Arya stepped closer and her breath caught. It was a list of names. Human names. Dozens of them. All listed under the same heading. Chosen brides. Her heartbeat pounded painfully. These were my predecessors. Selim's jaw tightened. Yes. Arya swallowed hard. What happened to them? Selim hesitated for a moment too long. The council claimed they failed the bond. Claimed they could not survive the realm. Claimed they returned to the mortal plane. Arya glared at him. But... Selim lowered his gaze. But I discovered years later that none of them returned. Their soul signatures vanished. Erased. Arya felt her stomach drop. The council killed them because they were human. The words trembled out of her. Selim did not answer. His silence was enough. Anger flooded her chest. I am not going to be another name on that list. Selim reached for her shoulder gently. That is why I brought you here. I will not allow it. Arya looked up at him, startled by the weight of his words. Before she could respond, a faint whisper echoed from deeper within the archive. It was soft, like a cry trapped in the walls. Arya turned sharply. Did you hear that? Selim stiffened. Yes. That is why we must not linger. The archive contains trapped echoes of erased souls. They linger between existence and nothing. They began walking back, but the whispering grew louder, suddenly frantic. Arya stopped. A pale spectral shape appeared near the shelves, flickering like a weak flame. It moved toward her, phasing in and out of form. Selim stepped in front of her instantly. Do not come closer. The spectre reached forward, its voice barely more than wind. Help us. Arya's breath hitched. Selim reached for his scythe, but Arya grabbed his arm. Wait. The spirit floated closer. Its shape sharpened into something resembling a woman. Her face was twisted with fear and sorrow. You must leave the court. You must not trust the throne. Arya frowned. The throne. Selim stiffened. Explain. The spirit's form crackled. Council took your power. Not fading. Stolen. Arya turned in shock to Selim. They are draining your power. Selim clenched his jaw. I suspected, but proof has been elusive. The spirit flickered violently, its voice cracking. He is coming. He knows you found us. Run. The lanterns around them dimmed at once. A wave of cold swept through the archive, far colder than Selim's presence. Arya felt her pulse spike. She reached for Selim's arm. Who is coming? Selim wrapped an arm around her and pulled her backward. Varel. We must go. Before she could process anything, the shadows erupted from the walls and surged toward them. They ran through the archive, dodging collapsing shelves and shrieking echoes. As they burst through the exit and slammed the door, Arya finally gasped for air. Her knees trembled. Varel. Selim nodded gravely. My second in command. He oversees most council decisions. And he is the only one with authority to access parts of my magic. Arya leaned against the wall. So the person closest to you is the one betraying you. Selim stared at the sealed door. Not the first time betrayal has walked beside me. Arya felt a pinch in her chest at the quiet ache in his voice. She wanted to comfort him, but she barely understood the situation herself. Instead, she asked softly, "What does this mean for us?" Selim finally turned his gaze to her. "It means the trials were never meant to test you. They were meant to eliminate you." Arya rubbed her temples. "So what now?" Before Selim could answer, another guard rushed toward them. His bones rattled with fear. "My king! The Banshee competitor has disappeared. And there are rumors she was taken by the same force draining your power." Arya exchanged a quick look with Selim. Whoever was manipulating the council had plans much larger than eliminating one human bride. Later, back in Selim's private chambers, Arya paced while Selim stood by the window of swirling shadows. She could feel him hiding something, a truth he was not ready to speak. She stopped pacing and faced him. "You are keeping something from me." Selim stayed silent. Arya felt frustration rising. "You said the bond is mutual. You said you would protect me? But you are not telling me everything, and that makes me feel like I am standing blindfolded in a battlefield." Selim finally turned. "The prophecy." Arya crossed her arms. "Another prophecy. Great." Selim exhaled slowly. "It states that a human bride will either restore the Reaper King or destroy him. No middle ground." Arya froze. "So they think I could be the reason you die?" Selim stepped closer, expression unreadable. "Or the reason I live." The weight of his words settled between them, too heavy and too intimate. Before she could answer, the room erupted in a swirl of violent cold. Shadows wrapped around Arya like chains, yanking her off her feet. Selim shouted her name, but the world blurred, and darkness swallowed her. She woke in a cavern lit by dim blue fire. Her arms and legs were free, but the air felt thick and heavy. She stood slowly, her heart hammering. Then she saw them. Dozens of translucent women drifting in the chamber. Human women. Their eyes hollow, their forms weakened. A chorus of whispers rose. "Do not scream. We were once like you." Arya stepped back in horror. The vanished brides. The spirits floated closer. "You must listen. The throne is not your ally. The council is not the only enemy. The realm itself is shifting. If the king falls, everything dies." Arya clenched her fists. "What do you want from me?" The spirits answered together, their voices layered. "Survive. Break the cycle. Choose the king. Or choose the end." Arya felt the cavern shift with every breath she took, as though the air itself was alive and deciding whether to keep her or swallow her whole. The faint blue fire flickered, casting trembling shadows on the stone walls. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her breathing as the whispers of the vanished brides faded into silence. Their last words clung to her like cold fingertips. "Break the cycle. Choose the king. Or choose the end." Arya swallowed hard. She had no idea what that meant. She did not know where she was. She did not know how to get back. She only knew one thing with certainty. She needed Selim. The cavern pulsed again, this time with a low hum that vibrated through her bones. She followed the sound cautiously, her footsteps echoing. Every few seconds she glanced behind her, expecting another spirit to appear or worse, the one who brought her here. The cavern narrowed into a tunnel, and she squeezed through, brushing against cold stone until she stumbled into a larger chamber. This one was brighter, illuminated by strange floating crystals. At first she thought they were lanterns. Then she saw faces trapped inside them. Human faces. The previous brides. Their eyes closed as though in sleep. Arya's breath stilled. She stepped close to one crystal, her hand trembling. The woman inside looked peaceful but far too still, her features gentle and resigned. Arya whispered, "They trapped you." One of the crystal lights flickered as if in faint response. A wave of fury rolled over her. "You deserved better," she murmured. "You deserved a chance." She turned away from the crystals, heart pounding, mind racing. This was not just cruelty. It was strategy. A way to eliminate threats and keep their power hidden. That meant she was next. But she was not going to allow that. She spotted a narrow crack in the wall leading upward and forced herself through, climbing using jagged edges as handholds. Every muscle trembled as she dragged herself higher. The tunnel opened onto a ledge overlooking a long underground river of shadows flowing like ink. She stared. This realm could not stop surprising her. A faint glow shimmered on the other side of the river, a doorway etched with runes she recognized from Selim's magic. Relief surged through her. Selim. She climbed down carefully, approached the river cautiously, and touched the surface. Shadow tendrils curled around her fingers, cold but not painful. She took a deep breath and stepped in. The shadows pulled her forward, carrying her through the river with eerie gentleness until she reached the opposite bank. She stumbled onto the stone floor just as the runic doorway flared. Light burst outward, temporarily blinding her. When it faded, she found herself standing in Selim's throne room. Dozens of reapers snapped their attention toward her. There she is. The human lives. What impossible luck. Arya ignored them. Her gaze was drawn immediately to Selim. He stood near the throne, surrounded by guards, arguing with Lord Varel. Selim's voice was sharp with barely contained rage. "You will open the barriers now. Where is she?" Varel, tall and composed with pale silver eyes that held no warmth, clasped his hands calmly. "My king, she has likely fled. Humans break easily under pressure." Arya stepped forward. "Funny. I am still intact." The hall went silent. Selim turned so fast that shadows burst outward like a wave. Relief crashed through his expression before being buried beneath stern composure. "Arya." He strode to her, stopping just short of touching her. "Are you harmed?" She shook her head, though her legs were shaking. "I am fine. Mostly. But we need to talk." Varel approached, and Arya's stomach twisted. This was the one the spirit had warned her about. The Reaper bowed slightly. "You return unharmed." "Fortunate." Arya stared at him, forcing herself to stay still even though her instincts screamed danger. "I met the previous brides. They told me the truth." Varel's expression did not waver. "And what truth would that be?" Arya took a step closer to Selim instead of answering. She lowered her voice. "They said the council has been draining your power." Selim's eyes sharpened with fury. "Varel." The hall darkened around them as Selim's power flared. Varel raised a placid hand. "My king, these accusations from a frightened human are beneath your dignity." Arya ignored him and continued. "They said the throne itself cannot be trusted." The room erupted in whispers. Selim turned slowly to Varel, his voice cold as the deepest shadows. "Is this true?" Varel smirked faintly. "The realm needs stability. Your power has weakened. The council merely secures what you can no longer control." Arya stepped between them before Selim could strike. "Selim. They planned all of this. The trials. The attacks. The disappearances. They want to replace you. They want the throne." Selim's expression shifted into something ancient and terrifying. "Guards. Seize Varel." But before the guards could move, Varel raised a shard of obsidian, glowing with stolen energy. The shadows in the room twisted violently. Selim staggered. Arya gasped. "He is draining you right now." Chaos erupted. Reapers scrambled as Varel unleashed a blast of corrupted magic. Selim caught the attack with one hand, but Arya could see the strain ripple across his features. More council members appeared on the balcony above, channeling energy into Varel. The coup had begun. Arya ducked as a bolt of shadow lightning struck the floor beside her. She grabbed Selim's arm instinctively. What do we do? Selim clenched his jaw. The bond. You awakened it. Use it. Arya felt panic spike. I do not know how. Varel laughed cruelly. She cannot even control her own fear. How will she control the king? Arya forced herself to inhale. She remembered the spirit's words. Survive. Break the cycle. Choose the king. She grabbed Selim's hand. The bond pulsed instantly, light flooding through her chest, flowing into him. Selim's eyes widened. Arya. She squeezed his hand tighter. Take whatever you need. Shadows surged around them violently, but instead of attacking, they circled protectively. Selim's strength returned little by little, his aura flaring brighter than it had since she met him. Varel roared in frustration. Stop them. They are merging power. Council Reapers leapt toward Arya, but the shadows slammed them away. Arya felt the pressure on her chest intensify, as though she was holding the weight of the realm itself. Selim's voice echoed in her mind. You are doing it. Do not stop. She gritted her teeth as the bond streamed through her, burning but steady. Varel unleashed a final desperate blast. Selim caught it effortlessly. With one sweeping motion, he shattered the obsidian shard in Varel's hand. The hall fell still. Varel dropped to his knees, shaken. Selim stepped forward, radiating power strong enough to crack the marble under his feet. You betrayed your king. You threatened my bride. Your reign ends now. Shadows rose like a wave and wrapped around Varel, dragging him into the void below the throne room. Silence followed. No one dared breathe. Arya was still catching her breath as Selim lifted her into his arms, his grip steady despite the chaos that still crackled faintly through the throne room. The air felt different now, as if the realm itself had exhaled in relief. Reapers knelt and rose, their hollow eyes lowered in a mixture of fear, reverence, and awe. Even the shadows along the walls bowed their shifting heads as Selim stepped forward with Arya in his arms. She blinked tiredly, her voice strained. You can put me down now. I am not going to collapse. Selim gave her a look that suggested he did not trust that statement in the slightest, but he gently lowered her to her feet, one hand staying on her arm to steady her. Arya managed to stand, though every muscle trembled from the strain of channeling the bond. She straightened anyway, refusing to show weakness before the court. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. The human bride stands. Impossible. She wields bond power. Dangerous. Or chosen. The whispers washed over her, but she kept her eyes on Selim. He looked down at her with something like pride softening the edges of his usually stern expression. Then he stepped forward, his voice echoing through the hall. The council has betrayed the realm. Their actions end today. No one lifted their gaze. No one dared. Selim continued. Varel is imprisoned in the void for treason. Those who aided him will face judgment. Shadows swept up the remaining rebellious council members, binding them and dragging them away, their protests swallowed by the darkness. When the hall finally fell silent again, Selim turned toward the throne. Arya sensed a shift in him, a gravity settling onto his shoulders. He walked toward the throne slowly, each step making the floor tremble. The massive structure of obsidian and bone pulsed with an eerie glow. It felt alive, ancient, and heavy with memories Arya did not want to imagine. Selim placed a hand on the armrest, shadows curling around his fingers like greeting an old friend. The throne accepted him instantly, its glow stabilizing as if relieved to be connected to the rightful ruler again. Selim lowered himself onto the seat, and the entire hall bent into a deep, unified bow. Arya felt something tug deep inside her chest, a resonance with the throne, with Selim, with the realm itself. Her knees weakened, but she stayed upright. Selim looked at her from the throne, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Step forward, Arya. His voice was softer now, but no less commanding. She approached slowly, aware of every gaze following her. When she reached the base of the throne, Selim lifted a hand, and shadows lifted her gently until she stood on the platform beside him. For a moment she wondered if he would ask her to stand as a symbol, or demand some formal ritual. Instead, his voice lowered so only she could hear. You are not obligated to stay. You have a choice. The realm is no prison. Arya blinked at him, stunned. After everything, he was still giving her a way out. She thought of the vanished brides trapped in crystals, of the whispers warning her to choose or lose everything. She thought of Selim collapsing under the stolen power, of the way he looked at her in the arena, and of the strange, steady pull she felt every time he touched her. Her voice came out quiet but sure. I choose to stay. Selim closed his eyes briefly, some tension in him finally releasing. He turned to the hall and spoke loudly enough for every reaper and shadow to hear. Arya Bell is the rightful bride under the cosmic bond. She stands with the king. She stands with the realm. She is your queen. The reaction rolled through the hall like thunder. Lower-ranked reapers erupted in cheers, some banging their sides against the floor in approval. Upper nobles stiffened but bowed nonetheless, their pride outweighed by their fear and awe. Arya stood tall even as her legs trembled. She had never pictured herself as anyone's queen, much less queen of the dead, but the roles settled around her shoulders like a cloak she was surprisingly capable of bearing. As the hall slowly dispersed under Selim's orders, Selim led her to his private chambers where the weight of ceremony slipped away. Arya sank into a seat with a groan. My entire body feels like overcooked spaghetti. Selim sat beside her, watching her closely. You used an immense amount of energy. You should rest. Arya shot him a tired smile. You say that like rest is an option in this place. He surprised her with a small, rare smile. Now that the court is subdued, it will be. For a moment, quiet filled the room. Not the eerie, unsettling quiet of the underworld, but something gentler. She finally spoke softly. Those spirits. The previous brides. They told me to choose the king or choose the end. What does that mean? Selim's expression darkened. The bond between a Reaper king and his bride is not just a union. It is a stabilizing force for the realm. If the bond breaks, if the king falls, the entire underworld collapses. The living and the dead would suffer. Everything would dissolve into chaos. Arya's throat tightened. So this bond is bigger than us. Selim nodded. And yet it depends only on us. She let that sink in, feeling simultaneously terrified and honored. She glanced at him, studying the shadows that curled protectively around him, the depth of power in his gaze, the vulnerability he rarely showed. Despite everything, there was something steady in the way he looked at her, as if he believed she belonged here as much as he did. Arya reached out and hesitantly placed her hand over his. He froze, then slowly intertwined their fingers. They sat in silence, connected by the bond, by survival, by choice. But the calm did not last long. A crackling sound echoed from the far corner of the room. Arya flinched. Selim rose instantly, summoning shadows. A scroll materialized out of thin air and dropped to the floor with a thud. Arya frowned. Why does this realm keep delivering bad news through scroll mail? Selim picked it up, unrolled it, and his expression tightened. What now? Arya asked, fear creeping into her voice. Selim handed her the scroll. The message was short, written in sharp, flaming script that hummed with demonic energy. A cosmic error has been detected. Another match has been claimed. The Demon King Azarath asserts soulmate rights over Arya Bell. Arya stared at the message, her brain refusing to process it. You have got to be kidding me. Selim's shadows lashed violently, the floor cracking under the force of his barely contained fury. No. The word echoed like a command to the universe. Arya sighed, dropping her head into her hands. I really need to stop clicking yes on things.